first question for you is, how does it feel to have been on a podcast for 9.5 years and then to only come on once a month?
It's a little odd.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, you fast forward however many months it's been since June, maybe 5 months or so, and I still think of it as my podcast. And the reality of the situation is that it will never have not been my podcast. I mean, it will be something that I started. Even if I were to walk away or get hit by a bus tomorrow, it will always be something that I had started. Same thing with MicroConf. And I think that's odd when you sit there and look at whatever you do, whether it's building a business or launching a family, so to speak. It's like you were the creator, and you will always have been the creator no matter what happens. So whether you make some decisions to step away, to do other things, move on to a different phase of your life, you will always have been that creator, and that will never change.
Other questions for Mike?
People are being shy. I've gotten all
them.
kinds of questions the past couple days.
I'll keep going. I have 5 or 6 ready.
Hey, Mike. What's the main challenge that you're facing with users when it comes to Bluetick right now?
Oh, with users? Honestly, it's just getting traffic, and it sounds like a fairly straightforward problem to solve, and I don't think that it would be terribly difficult to solve it. I would say there's a lot of other underlying issues which have kind of caused Bluetick to not go in the direction that I would like it to. And Rob kind of alluded to them a little bit in terms of, I've always got all these things that I'm juggling, all these other things that I'm doing, and I don't have a lot of dedicated time to focus on Bluetick, for example, for like 2, 3, 5 weeks at a time. There's always these other little interruptions that come up because, you record a podcast and it's a weekly interruption. And most people don't realize this, but we actually back that off to recording every 2 weeks. So you still get the podcast every week, but we'll record an episode, and then we'll record another episode 5 minutes later. We'll just open up another thing in Zencaster. So sometimes you'll hear from one episode to the next, so what's going on this week? Not much since last week, and the reason is because last week was only about 10 minutes ago. So, some of those things are very, very much obscured. But most of what I would say the bigger challenges are just like working on myself, my own mental well-being and physical well-being. And the problem is those things really impact all the other stuff that you do. So last year, I was not scheduled to speak, and I knew that I had a ton of things going on. I was helping to put everything together for this conference, and at the last minute, we had a speaker drop out because of a family emergency. So I put together a talk in about a day and a half, and gave that talk. But there's those things that kind of pop up all the time. And it was just very difficult to schedule the time to work on Bluetick. And when those things pop up, they're very interruptive, and you think about them for longer periods of time. But one of the things I talked about last year was the fact that I've got sleep apnea. So I was diagnosed literally weeks before the conference. And it wasn't obvious, I think, to most people, but I would forget words. I was only getting maybe 2 hours of sleep a night, and that was for an extended period of time. And if you read anything about sleep deprivation, it is really, really bad. There's tons of books out there that you can read on it, but I was suffering from sleep deprivation so bad that it was probably going to kill me sooner rather than later. So had I been on that path, I may not even be here right now.
Wow. Okay, so maybe you already touched upon that, but my question is, have you talked about your ambition with Bluetick, and also, where you want to be in 1 year or 2 years, and especially why?
Especially why? So I've looked back. So I keep a notebook of like personal retreats and stuff that I do. And I took one earlier this year. It was, I think, at the end of August, beginning of August, something like that. And went on a personal retreat. It was going to be the last weekend that I was going to be able to, because my kids were going to be starting school and soccer season and everything was going to get crazy. And I looked back through that notebook and I started realizing that certain themes were there from year to year. And one of the things I looked back at was in 2017, I had written, this is where I am with Bluetick and this is where I want to be. And I am still not there. And I was thinking to myself in that, and I wrote down, in 10 weeks, I want to do this. Well, it has been 2 years, and I'm still not at that 10-week goal. So, to answer your question of do I know where I want to be, of course I do. I wrote it down 2 years ago. But I did write down why, and a lot of it has to do with I think a lot of the things that all of us in this room are really after is like financial independence. You don't want to have to worry about where your income is coming from. You want to be able to do the things that you want to do. And quite frankly, you just want to be in charge of your own time. You want to be master of your own destiny. And I think that's why everybody in this room has probably started a business. Most people just didn't fall into $1 million. But it doesn't make it easy. And sometimes you have to pick and choose the things that you might want to do, but are actually detrimental to those goals. So part of it is stepping back from things that I would like to go do, but I know that it's not going to help me towards those goals, and making sure that you actively say no to certain things when you want to do them, but it's probably counterproductive to do those things.
Mike, I think one thing that I feel a lot with kind of following your story is that I've known you for 4 or 5 years now and love you and would love to see you be happy and successful. And so I think a lot of people here want to help. And that comes in the form of unsolicited advice a lot of times. And I would love to hear from your perspective, maybe to help everyone here, talk about what you like to get out of interactions with other people here, and what you don't want to hear and what you don't want to get. Because I think we all want to help each other, and it all just goes around. And I think maybe kind of just for you and for everyone else here, like what's cool, what's not cool, and what's been helpful.
Sure. So on my last retreat that I did, a couple months ago, I wrote down a bunch of thoughts about, are there other people who could help me? What are my goals? What are my ambitions? And one of the things that had not necessarily occurred to me until I wrote it down was that I hate asking people for help. So that's a big personal challenge, I think. There's no reason for me to not do it. I'm sure that I've helped lots of people in this room. People who listen to the podcast have said all the time, like, hey, thanks for doing the podcast. It's been fantastic. Thanks for MicroConf. I'm awful when it comes to praise. It's not that I, say, I will joke about it. I will downplay it a lot. Because I like doing it. I don't necessarily like the massive recognition that comes with it. It's like I want to be famous and have the benefits of that, but not actually be famous. And it's a very weird mental dynamic where, like, I want to help people and I want to do things, and at least have somebody be aware on some level that I helped do that and was responsible for it. But I don't want, like, grandstands or parades or anything like that. I just don't want to be. I like the personal thank yous. I really do. And I don't really know how to answer the question other than that. There's probably many ways that people could help me, but I'm bad at asking for that help.
All right, to continue his question or double down on it, if you're not good at asking for it, mm-hmm. Is it okay if people say, hey, I've listened to a lot of people know your story. You're one of the more public folks probably in this room, at least in this space. And if people say, hey, I have an idea for you.
That's actually,
I think that's what Craig was getting at, is like, do you like that? Or is it kind of like.
I do, because it gives me a lot of ideas and it makes me consider things that I hadn't necessarily thought of. So like joint marketing efforts and direct integrations with other products. Bluetick's got an API that can do a lot of different things, and it'd be great to hook it into other products, but I don't necessarily know where to start, and I don't know every single product that every single one of you is working on. So I don't know whether Bluetick would fit into that or whether it would help your customers or mine. If you have something, more than happy to talk about it and see if we can do some sort of integration or joint marketing or something like that. But since I don't know what I don't know, it's hard to just answer that up front and say, hey, we should go do this.
Hey, so first off, just wanted to say big kudos to you for having the courage to go up on stage and put yourself out there like this. When you have somebody else that you are working with, like Rob, who's had a lot of success, how do you deal with envy? And let's first ask, do you feel it? And then number two is, if you feel it, how do you deal with it?
I would definitely classify it as envy rather than jealousy, because I think there's a very fine line between those two. But at the same time, I'm very proud of what Rob has accomplished. And I don't think that there's anything that I would want to ever say or do or think of that would even detract from that, because he should be genuinely proud of all the accomplishments, and I'm very happy for him. But at the same time, when you're on a trajectory, like right now alongside of somebody, we started out at about the same time, and obviously like his trajectory has gone way up into the right, and mine's like meandered along a little bit. I'm doing okay, but at the same time, it can't go on forever, because eventually there's that, cliff at the end where I'm the coyote and the roadrunner's just. I'm not saying Rob's a Rob.
That's exactly what he's saying.
He is tall, but I've seen the cartoons. wasn't the analogy I wanted to make. If you could take back 6 seconds of time, that'd be one of them.
So, Rob.
Mike.
Sorry,
Mike.
Mike, not. Mike. You've put a huge amount into this community, and I think you were alluding to it earlier on. People were saying, what would be helpful? You mentioned you didn't actually ask for anything. I want to say to you, what can we do as a room now, here, to help you? Would it be useful to push out to the people that we know on Twitter and talk about Bluetick and tell people to go and check it out? Should we do something like that? Can we do something like that?
You probably could. Interesting story. Back when I took some time off from the podcast, I've not been on social media either. So I've not been on Twitter or Facebook or pretty much anything since that time. I basically stuck my head in the sand, and very intentionally. Specific things that you could do, yeah, I mean, tweeting might help. I don't think that a lot of leads would come in very much through Twitter, to be perfectly honest. Bluetick just isn't really that type of thing. But talking about it when it comes up in situations where people are talking about warm and cold email follow-ups, say, hey, have you checked out Bluetick? That would be very helpful. Direct referrals and things like that. Introductions is a really good thing. Bluetick has a lot of good word of mouth. So when people start using it, my customers have a tendency to tell their friends about it, and that tends to be the direct channel or the best channel that I get, because word of mouth. I mean, quite honestly, the fact of the matter is I'm an engineer. I'm not a designer, and Bluetick is a direct reflection of that when you log in. It's very obvious that it was built by an engineer, but it works well, and it does exactly what you need it to do. There isn't really a great billing page. You can't see old things like that. So there's certain things that it could, be cleaned up, of course, but the product works really well. And that's what I struggle with in terms of the cold email market, because I see a lot of people out there who are doing cold email, and they're doing a really, really bad job of it. And I don't want my tool to be used for people who are using, selling, supplements that don't actually work or don't improve other people's lives or businesses or world. I'm very much of a mindset of, I want to improve the world around me. And Bluetick is a reflection of that, and it's reflected in some of the marketing that I do. And the type of marketing that I don't do is to appeal to those people who are doing things that do not contribute to the greater good.
So who are your sort of ideal customers? Who are those people, and who in this room can relate to this group, do you think?
Yeah. Small business owners, for one, technical people. If you're integrating it in through Zapier, if you need any sort of goal reach. So I built Bluetick partially as a result of doing sponsorships for MicroConf, where I would email Peldy and say, hey, Peldy, would you like to sponsor MicroConf? And I know he's going to say yes. It's just a matter of when he's going to say yes or how long it's going to be. So I may need to email him once, twice, 3 times. And finally, when the server is no longer on fire and he's no longer deleting projects from all his customers, he'll get back to me and he'll send me an email and say, yeah, sure, I'm interested. But until those are done deleting, he's just not going to respond to me. But I have Bluetick in the background that's continuing that outreach effort, because I know eventually he's going to respond to it and he's going to say something. So situations like that, and there's obviously other use cases for dunning emails. You need somebody to update their credit card. Yeah, it can do that. It can do that outreach. Or if you want to schedule a call with somebody or get testimonials, all sorts of things like that. It's great for those types of outreach efforts where you need a response or you need them to schedule a call with you. You can integrate with Calendly, or you can book me, or various other calendar tools through Zapier integration. And it's not about some tools that, like Bluetick, you use them and you can click on a link inside of it and it tracks that link and fires off an event. And actually, if you're trying to schedule a meeting with somebody, you don't care about that click. You don't care how many times they clicked on it to view your calendar. What you actually care about is, did they book the meeting? Because when they book the meeting, that's when you want to pull them out of the email sequence and then move on to something else. So those are the types of situations. But like I said, I don't know all the businesses that everybody's in here is in and how that would help some of your customers. So it's hard for me to say exactly these types of people, but those are kind of generalities around what it does and how it does it.
So who in this room who's here sounds like that's an interesting thing for you personally? Stick your hand up. 5, 6.
Come see me afterwards.
Let's go and see this guy afterwards and see what we can do. See if you can cut us a deal.
I would appreciate the help. I really would. I suppose I could say I'm desperate for the help. But
That was Mark Littlewood, everyone. If you know business of software, he runs that. Thanks for coming this year, Mark. It's good to see you.
Other questions?
Hello.
Oh.
Yeah. I think that, is it right that the biggest asset you have is like this huge audience you've built? And have you maybe considered pivoting to a product that more people in this room would be able to use?
I have. And I've had discussions with several customers over the past few weeks that explore some of those. And some of those ideas and some of the things that would come out of that are, it's almost not quite a pivot, it's almost a completely new product. So it's a fine line between let me add a few features or let me do a few things that are going to change how the product is working or what it does for people versus something that's almost fundamentally a rewrite. And I really don't want to go down the path of a complete rewrite. And maybe at the end of the day, that happens to be the thing. I think that most people in this room, they don't build or engineer very many SaaS applications, and I don't exclude myself from that group. And as you get through it, you get into the architecture and you start learning things like, oh shoot, I should throw away this entire code base and rewrite it. And that's not typically the right answer, but at the same time, the process of going through it and learning how different events get triggered or different things that you track or how the sign-up process works, you learn those things that you should have done in the first place, but you didn't know that you needed to do. So prime example is earlier, Peldy put something up and he showed like, oh, we have this internal dashboard. Here's a button, you can restart somebody's trial. That'd be great to have in Bluetick. And I gave him a hard time during lunch, and I said, you really should have showed me that slide 2 years ago, because that button was awesome. But I think it's just learning those things, and I don't have a concrete answer of whether I should completely pivot. Rob is no longer with Drip, so I thought about rewriting Drip, but bad idea.
Hey, Mike. I think you have a very it's important to you to do good in the world and be the ethical good guy. Obviously, you're in the space that's, cold email, and you must have gotten a fair few potential customers who would be doing what you would consider unethical or just sleazy. Do you have an idea of the percentage or the amount of revenue you left on the table by not wanting to serve that market?
I don't. It is probably not nearly as high as you might think it is. Most of the people that I end up having as customers, they're either a really good fit for what Bluetick does or they're not. And the fundamental technical decisions that I made when building it kind of filtered out the types of people that would do tens of thousands of emails per day, for example. It's like you literally can't do it inside of Bluetick. So if the product can't do that, those people are not going to be attracted to it. So if I were to go in that direction and you say build a tool for nefarious purposes, I had a conversation with somebody who literally wanted to send 30, 40,000 emails per day. And I was just like, no, that's just not what I want to do. But he didn't want to pay more than $1,000 a month, so.
Mike.
Yes.
First of all, we all love you, obviously. As you can tell, everyone wants to help you. But I just wanted to know, obviously every one of us are here because we've been struggling to some extent, or we've reached friction. And so my curiosity is, what are you learning right now, or what realizations are you having as you're meeting friction? And what do you kind of feel like you're in the middle of discovering or realizing that maybe you didn't think of 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when you were as naive as we all were when we thought, I'm going to build a business and it's going to be awesome and it's going to be easy and we're going to live the dream on the beach working on our laptop occasionally?
I would say a lot of it is about myself personally and realizing that, it's been no secret that I've had back problems for kind of as long as I can remember. In the past year or two, I've struggled with weight loss as well. So before I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, I was on Adderall for focus because I couldn't focus on my work, and then I couldn't sleep at night, so I was on medication for that. So I was going back and forth between them. It's like I take meds so I can sleep, and then I take other meds so that I can focus during the day. It's like back and forth. And obviously that bouncing back and forth is not good. I'm actually off of all of that right now as a result of the CPAP machine. And as I get older, It's also harder to do things like simple things like lose weight. When I went off the Adderall, I immediately put on like 15 pounds. And like I've lost probably 18 pounds in the past, I don't know, 12, 14 weeks, something like that. Which sounds better than it is because I actually lost my laptop at one point and that was 8 pounds of it. So I'm really just down 10. But that 10 pounds has been in the last month and a half or two. But it was level for the longest time, and nothing was moving for me. So there was my weight loss, Bluetick wasn't moving, I wasn't adding more customers, wasn't adding more traffic, and pretty much everything was locked up, complete logjam. And now that my weight has changed a little bit, I apparently was not eating enough, I was apparently not eating the right proportions of different foods, and as soon as I changed those, that fixed. And it was very, very noticeable very quickly. So now I've got that done. My Zapier integration is almost complete, and it's going through their beta program right now. Next I've got the Google security audit that kicks off on Monday right after MicroConf has ended. And just recognizing that I'm not as young as I used to be. Like I said, my back has been a problem. Like my arms and legs look great, but I've also got the belly in the middle too. So it's like I've got hardware and software problems. It sucks. But just getting older, like I just physically can't keep up the way I used to. So there's a recognition that like I really need that work-life balance a little bit more than I used to, because I used to be able to just power through, and I was a night owl. I could just, burn the candle at both ends, and I can't do that anymore. I have to go to bed at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And there are times where I can stay up a little bit later. Like Saturday, I stayed up till 5 a.m. Bad idea. I paid for it. But, hopefully that debt has already been paid. But yeah, I mean, it's just the recognition that there are limits to what I'm able to do, partly physically, but partly mentally and emotionally. So I don't berate myself for not meeting my own expectations anymore. So if it's 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting there at work, and I haven't accomplished anything for the day, in the past couple of months, I've gotten to the point where I just call it a day. At 11 o'clock in the morning, it's like, I know that I'm not going to get anything else done today, or it's not going to be meaningful progress. So why bother to continue doing it? Why bother sitting in that chair and then berating myself later on for not being able to make progress during the day, and just walk away, start again tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new day. You're basically I'm hitting the reset button at those times. So by basically enabling myself to make those decisions, it helps me, because then I get kind of a mental reset. I'm no longer at a point where the battery's burning down, and by sitting there until 6 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock at night, it continues to go down rather than walking away and letting it recharge.
Time for one more.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. And I can recognize a lot of what you're saying there, especially with getting older and not being able to do the same things and all that stuff, and calling it a day, that's a struggle for me. My question is, which just popped into my head just now, how do you keep believing in getting success with, if you feel like, you're getting older, everything is declining, how do you stick to a belief and getting up in the morning?
I'm kind of an idiot. I don't know. Delusional, something along those lines. I don't know. I've always been confident in my own abilities, but not necessarily to the point of wanting to shout it from the rooftops. I always used to thrive as somebody who, when I was doing consulting, I was the person who always got dropped into the firestorm. I was the one who was sent to customers. They'd tell me the day before, we need you there tomorrow morning. And I'd go there and I'd solve their problems very quickly, and then that was kind of it. But it was a repeated thing when I was a consultant. I always got dropped into the worst customers. And it did wear on me after a while. I got to a point where I couldn't do it. And part of that was just, you deal with those types of customers every single day, week in, week out, and it wears on you. In terms of being able to get up and just continue to have the motivation to keep going when you're not really seeing progress, it's been hard. It's been really hard. And in the last, I'd say year or so, the last year and a half at least, Bluetick hasn't made a lot of progress, and a lot of that has been a direct result of the lack of sleep and not being able to focus. And I recognize that. But I think at the time when I was in the middle of it, I did not. So at this point, I feel like I'm a little bit recharged. I mean, if you asked me where things were at 6 months ago, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm kind of getting near the tail end of burnout, and that was absolutely not true. And I could say that 3 months ago, and I could say that now. And I feel better today than I did 3 months ago, and 3 months ago I felt better than the previous 3 months. So things are getting better, but maybe they're not where they need to be, and I don't know the answer to that. But I am hopeful and optimistic. I mean, a lot of people in this room have great businesses that are moving forward. And I want to say it can't possibly be this hard, but I think we all know that running a business is hard. But I think there's a lot of inspiration that I take from the people in this room who have their own businesses that are growing, that are making revenue, that are bringing in new customers and growing. And it's a direct result of MicroConf. And I feel like if you beat your head against that wall enough times, eventually something's got to give. And I feel like, why can't that happen for me? What's wrong? Not what's wrong, but maybe the continuous thread there is I'm the problem. And I've thought about that. I've given that a lot of thought. And I don't think that that's the case. I think it's more all the ancillary stuff that has held me back. The fear of going out and actively marketing a product and saying, oh, well, you need to use this product. Look at what I've built. Remember how I said before, I'm not real good at asking for help? I'm also not real good at shoving my product in people's faces and saying, hey, you should take a look at this. This is really good. Because the fact is, it is good. I just don't, I have a bit of a problem with that. And I think that for me personally, it's really just, I need to learn to get over that and then put my product out there because it is a good product. But I think a lot of the people in this room, it's inspiring to see what you guys are accomplishing. And I know that if I keep at it enough, then I could certainly achieve what everybody else is.
Thank you, Mike.